But the first game on the slate, last time, I think we buried it. This time, we're coming out with the game of potentially of the entire week one. We have Florida at Utah. The Utes are 6.5-point favorites with an over under 45.5 points. Game kicks at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. This line was at Utah minus 4.5 because doubt surrounded Cam Rising, whether or not he would play towards ACL in the Rose Bowl. He's working his way back. Then they released a depth chart and it had Cam Rising at QB1. And that line climbed back to that 6.5, 7 points that we were seeing before. Now, I like your opinion on this, or just, where you lean. I personally don't think that releasing Rising as QB1 on the depth chart really changes anything. Did it change your mindset at all?
No, it didn't change mine. I think it was expected. I'll get into this too, Brett. I think my numbers, I've been assuming Rising's going to be the quarterback throughout with all of this. I deal with injuries a little bit differently than most. I'm not going probable, doubtful, 40%, 80%. If they're not ruled out, I'm counting them in. And that gets me into trouble sometimes. But again, I'm not out here to bet. I'm out here to try to look at games holistically, seasons holistically, and conference championship races holistically. It's going to vary and make differences here or there, but it's a good general approach for me. So I'm still counting Cam Rising being in, and I'll get more into that with my numbers here in a bit.
That's fair. And I'll talk about my play in a little bit. It goes against that. It plays on the possibility that Cam Rising does not play. I just don't think that him being listed on the two deep is necessarily saying, yeah, he's in. Because Kyle Whittingham came out Monday and said, I'm refusing to comment on him and Brant Kuithe. So I don't know that they're going to play or not. I don't even know if Utah knows if they're going to play or not. I think that was just a presumptive depth chart. Also note, the backup quarterback, Brandon Rose, he suffered a scary, serious camp injury that was pretty recent, and he may not play at all this year. He's definitely not playing in this game. So if Cam Rising doesn't go, we're now dealing with a third-string quarterback, which, of course, is a big, much different story. I touched on it briefly. Star tight end Brant Kuithe's a game-time decision. He suffered a season-ending injury much earlier in the year last year, and his recovery is taking a whole lot longer because that was back in September that he was hurt, and he's still working his way back, may or may not play. He's called a game-time decision. If we're looking at Florida, it is difficult to travel backwards to time zones and then play altitude. They're playing at over 4,600 feet at Rice-Eccles Stadium as opposed to about 0 feet in Gainesville. So that I think that the home edge of like 2.2 points is what Sagarin has it at right now. That's what I'm factoring in as right now. I think you have to factor more than that into it. And if you're using a weighted home field advantage, good for you. That's great. I would love to if I could find more reliable data on that. Of course, but I think you have to give a little bit of a boost because you're also dealing with the raucous home environment of Salt Lake City, Rice-Eccles being maybe one of the most under the radar, very, very, very difficult environments to play in Pac-12 aficionados, of course, know plenty about that. And if you're looking at Florida's roster, they're pretty banged up in camp. They've lost a starter on the defensive line and a ton of depth. They actually have 9 guys that are listed as questionable or worse coming into this game. Maybe that's just more honest reporting from Florida. I'm sure a lot of teams have 9 or 10 guys that are hurt right now. But when you scroll down the available injuries, which I do track on my own, and if you're in the Discord server, you do have access to that sheet as well. Shameless plug there. But Florida seems to have a lot more injuries than other teams. Ones I'm concerned with, receiver Ricky Pearsall, he's listed with an illness, and he's in game-time decision. Not sure what's going on there. Starting tight end Dante Sanders, he has a lower body injury. He may or may not play. He was listed as a starter, though. Caleb Douglas, he's questionable. And like I said, the starter on defensive line, Justice Boone, is out for the season. I did take Florida plus 7.5 because I'm still confident. I don't know if that's the right word, but I just don't think that listing Rising as a QB1 means that he is now uninjured and ready to play. I was hoping that we could get Utah maybe played down to -3, that I would play some back, but that's just not happening right now. Kelly, how do you slice and dice this game?
Yeah, this is my number 2 game of the week, Brett, behind only LSU, Florida State. My numbers, we talked about it. I have Utah -7.5, and that's assuming a healthy Cam Rising. I have Utah power rated number 15 overall with the nation's number 12 projected offense, which, Brett, get this, that's good enough for only 4th best in the Pac-12. It's number 12 nationally, but that Pac-12 is just loaded with quarterbacks and offenses. The defense is projecting as the number 22 unit, which is actually in the country, which is actually the best in the Pac-12. So you have a number 12 projected offense, fourth best in your own conference. Number 22 defense is actually the best. So that just kind of gives you a lay of the land quickly of what the Pac-12 is going to look like this year in their final year of existence. Florida, for me, is power rated number 25, number 23 projected offense, and number 46 projected defense. So I expect a very even matchup between the Florida offense and the Utah defense. The difference for me is when that number 12 Utah offense is on the field, presumably with Cam Rising, against the number 46 Florida defense. Even if Cam Rising doesn't play, though, the game being in Salt Lake City could be the ultimate difference here. You mentioned the altitude. It's certainly going to play a factor. Those fans are going to be pumped up and ready to go. I think that you said you used 2.2 points. I'm in that ballpark as well. I would listen if you wanted to say, let's make it more than that. From a schedule perspective, Florida is at home against FCS McNeese next week, so their focus should be squarely on the Utes. Utah, on the other hand, they have to travel to Baylor next week, so the Utes are going to need to be careful and not get caught peeking ahead. I don't think that's going to be a problem, considering this is a revenge game for Utah from the 26-29 defeat in Gainesville last year. I'm going to end every segment that I'm talking, Brett, with kind of a K-Ford bottom line, summarize things. Hopefully that helps the viewers. Bottom line, my numbers have Utah minus 7.5 at home. That equates to a 70% win expectancy for the Utes.
And if you're kind of waffling, maybe, a lot of states are new to college football betting. A lot of states with big colleges in them. Ohio, the one that I live in, new to the legal sports betting game. So I just kind of wanted to explain the difference between 6.5 and 7.5 and why that's not the same difference between minus 4.5 and minus 5. 7 runs through what we call a key betting figure in football. And I'm just explaining this so that we have all of our bases covered. When you're dealing with 7 points, 14% of college football games end squarely on 7. So you have to think when you move off of that 7 or through that 7, that is a 14% change. So if you get a 6 versus an 8, you are actually getting a 14% edge with the 6 if you're looking to lay the Utes here. So you can get them at that mentioned 6.5. Do not bet it at the square 7 or, God forbid, 7.5. Shop around and get your best number. And that's why I'm excited about Florida plus 7.5. And I'm not so sad that I missed out on, say, 8.5, because when you're dealing with 8, you're only talking about 4% of college football games ending on that 8 square. I just really think that this game is going to fluctuate so wildly based on Cam Rising's availability. Like I said, Monday declined to comment on his or Brant Keithy's status, probably because the team doesn't even know, but we'll see. Now, if you really strip it down, you could say, wow, Brett, you just went ahead and bet a team on the road at Rice-Eccles Stadium, a team that is led by the one and only Graham Mertz. And you know what? When you say it out loud like that, it seems kind of silly. And I've been pretty vocal about how I think that Florida is kind of overrated in the power ratings this year. But if you're playing the market game, if you're looking, buying and selling stocks almost that we do here with these lines, I did like that Florida plus 7.5. When player props do eventually hit, which I think this one will have the first player props of the weekend slate, I'm absolutely looking to fade Graham Mertz on principle alone. Just whatever his passing yards are, down to a certain amount. If it starts with a 2, I'm probably looking to fade it because sadly, and I wanted Graham Mertz to succeed. I really did. I wanted him to be a great quarterback. Thought he would be. He's just not that guy.